The blood soaking through Vincent Calloway's shirt told Winona Garrett everything she needed to know about the kind of day he'd been having when his ranch hands carried him through her front door on that scorching August afternoon in 1876. She'd been washing dishes in her small cottage on the outskirts of Castle Dome, Arizona Territory, when the desperate pounding started. And now 3 dusty cowboys stood in her parlor supporting a man who could barely keep his eyes open. "Please, miss," the youngest one said, his voice cracking with panic. "He got thrown from his horse 3 days back, hit his head on a rock. The fever started yesterday and won't break. Doc Henderson's gone to Yuma and won't be back for a week. You're the only one who knows healing around here." Winona wiped her wet hands on her apron, her heart racing as she assessed the situation. Vincent Calloway was known throughout Yuma County as the most successful rancher in the territory, a man who'd built his empire from nothing after the war. She'd seen him in town occasionally, always polite, always fair in his dealings, but they'd never spoken more than a few words. Now he was barely conscious in her home, his dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat, his strong frame trembling with chills despite the oppressive heat. "Bring him to the bedroom quickly," she commanded, leading them down the short hallway. "Lay him on the bed, gently now." They did as instructed, handling their boss with surprising tenderness. Winona immediately began unbuttoning his blood-soaked shirt, revealing a nasty gash across his ribs that had been poorly bandaged. But it was the fever that worried her most. His skin burned like a stove, and his breathing came in shallow, labored gasps. "When did he last drink water?" she asked, already moving to gather supplies from her medicine cabinet. "Can't say for certain, miss. He's been out of his head most of today," the oldest cowboy answered, twisting his hat in his hands. "Will he make it?" Winona met his worried gaze with determination she didn't entirely feel. "I'll do everything I can. Now go back to the ranch and bring me clean sheets, more bandages if you have them, and tell your cook to make broth. Strong beef broth. I'll need it brought here twice daily until the fever breaks." "Yes, miss. Thank you, miss." They filed out, leaving her alone with the unconscious rancher. She worked quickly, cleaning the wound with water she'd boiled and mixed with whiskey. The gash was deep, but mercifully clean. The real enemy was the fever ravaging his body. She'd seen this before, after her father died and she'd taken over caring for the sick and injured who couldn't afford proper medical attention or couldn't reach the doctor in time. Head injuries were tricky, unpredictable. They could take a man's life or his mind, and there was often little anyone could do but wait and pray. Winona prepared cool compresses and placed them on Vincent's forehead, neck, and chest. She managed to get a few drops of willow bark tea past his cracked lips, hoping it would help with the fever. Then she pulled a chair beside the bed and began the long vigil that would consume her life for the next several weeks. The first night was the worst. Vincent thrashed and moaned, crying out words she couldn't understand. He was reliving something, perhaps a memory from the war, perhaps something more recent. She held him down when his movements threatened to reopen his wound, speaking softly even though he couldn't hear her, telling him he was safe, that he needed to rest, that she was there. By dawn, her arms ached and her voice was hoarse, but the fever hadn't broken. She changed the compresses, forced more tea between his lips, and checked his wound. No infection yet, which was a blessing. She said a silent prayer of thanks and continued her work. The ranch hands came as promised, bringing fresh supplies and broth. The oldest one, who introduced himself as Dutch, lingered at the doorway with concern etched deep in his weathered face. "How's the boss?" he asked quietly. "The same, but he's strong. He's fighting." Winona accepted the basket of supplies gratefully. Tell me, does he have family? Anyone who should be notified, Dutch shook his head. His parents passed before the war, got a younger sister back east, married to some banker in Philadelphia, but there's no time to reach her, and even if there was, she couldn't get here for weeks. Then it's just us, Winona said. I won't let him die, Dutch, I promise you that. The old cowboy's eyes grew moist. He's a good man, miss. Best I ever worked for, fair wages, treats us right. This ranch, these men, were all counting on him pulling through. After Dutch left, Winona heated the broth and managed to spoon small amounts into Vincent's mouth, massaging his throat to help him swallow. It was tedious, exhausting work, but she could see he needed nourishment to fight the fever. Days blurred together. She barely left his side except to prepare food and fresh medicine. She dozed in the chair when exhaustion overcame her, always jolting awake at the slightest change in his breathing. The fever raged on, sometimes climbing so high she feared his brain would cook, other times dropping enough to give her false hope before spiking again. On the 5th day, she had to cut away more of his shirt because he'd soaked it through with sweat. As she worked, she couldn't help but notice the scars that covered his torso. Old wounds from the war, she assumed. This man had survived so much, fought so hard to build his life. He deserved to survive this too. You have to keep fighting, she whispered, bathing his chest with cool water. You have people depending on you, a whole ranch full of men who look up to you. You can't give up now. His hand suddenly moved, fingers grasping weakly at the air. Without thinking, Winona took his hand in hers, squeezing gently. His fingers curled around hers with surprising strength, and for a moment his ravings quieted. She kept holding his hand after that, even when she changed compresses or adjusted his position. It seemed to calm him, and she found it calmed her too. There was something intimate about this vigil, about being the sole person standing between this strong man and death. She was seeing him at his most vulnerable, caring for him in ways usually reserved for family or a wife. By the end of the first week, the wound had healed nicely, showing no signs of infection. Winona took pride in her careful tending, even as worry about the fever consumed her. Head injuries were so unpredictable. Even if he survived, he might not wake up the same man who'd been carried through her door. Dutch came twice daily without fail, bringing supplies and asking after his boss. Sometimes other ranch hands accompanied him, their young faces drawn with worry. She learned that Vincent had taken many of them in when they had nowhere else to go, giving them work and purpose. He'd built his ranch into one of the most successful operations in the territory through hard work and treating his men with respect. He never asks us to do anything he wouldn't do himself, one young hand named Tommy told her on the 8th day. Works harder than any of us, but never lords it over us. When my mother took sick last year, he paid for the doctor himself and gave me time off to care for her. Didn't dock my wages neither. These stories painted a picture of a man worth saving, a man who made the world around him better. Winona felt her determination renewed with each visit, each story. She would not let this good man die. The second week brought new challenges. The fever fluctuated wildly, and Vincent's delirium grew worse. He called out names she didn't recognize, relived battles she could only imagine. Sometimes he seemed peaceful, murmuring words too soft to hear. Other times he grew agitated, his strong body fighting against enemies only he could see. Winona barely recognized herself in the mirror anymore. Her chestnut hair, usually neatly pinned, hung in a loose braid down her back. Dark circles shadowed her green eyes, and she'd lost weight from forgetting to eat. But she couldn't stop. Every time she looked at Vincent's face, saw the strength there even in unconsciousness, she knew she had to keep going. She talked to him constantly now, filling the silence with stories from her own life. She told him about growing up in Missouri, about coming west after her father died, seeking a fresh start in the territories. She told him about learning healing from her grandmother, about the satisfaction of helping people who had nowhere else to turn. She told him things she'd never told anyone, secrets and dreams spilling out in the quiet hours of the night when it was just the two of them and the flickering lamplight. "You'd probably think I'm crazy if you could hear me," she said one night during the second week, sponging his face with cool water. "Talking to an unconscious man like he's my dearest friend, but I feel like I'm getting to know you through your men, through your reputation. You're a good person, Vincent Calloway. The world needs more men like you, so you have to wake up. You have to come back." His fever spiked dangerously high that night. Winona stripped the blankets away and covered him with wet sheets, desperately trying to bring his temperature down. She prayed harder than she'd ever prayed, begging God not to take this man who'd done so much good, who was loved by so many, who deserved a long and happy life. As dawn broke, the fever finally dropped to a safer level. Vincent's breathing grew steadier, deeper. Winona collapsed in her chair, tears of relief streaming down her face. He wasn't out of danger yet, but he'd survived another crisis. Dutch found her asleep in the chair that morning, her hand still clasped in Vincent's. He covered her with a blanket and left fresh supplies in the kitchen, his own eyes wet with emotion at the dedication this woman was showing his boss. The third week brought a turning point. The fever began breaking for longer periods, and Vincent's sleep became more natural, less disturbed. His body had fought off whatever infection the head injury had caused, and now it was healing. Winona allowed herself to hope. She used the calmer periods to care for herself properly, taking quick baths and eating full meals. She needed her strength for when he woke, if he woke. She pushed that dark thought away. He would wake. She had to believe that. On the 20th day, Vincent's eyes opened. It was just after dawn. Winona was changing the compress on his forehead when his hand suddenly caught her wrist. She gasped, looking down to find clear blue eyes staring up at her with confusion and exhaustion. "Where?" he croaked, his voice rough from disuse. "Where am I?" Winona's heart soared even as she kept her voice calm and steady. "You're safe. You're in my home in Castle Dome. You were injured almost 3 weeks ago. Don't try to move too quickly." Vincent's eyes moved around the room, trying to process information his fevered brain had missed. 3 weeks, he repeated, disbelief coloring his words. "You had a bad head injury and a terrible fever. But you're going to be fine now." She gently freed her wrist and poured water into a cup. "Here, drink this slowly. Your body needs fluids." He let her help him sit up slightly, though the effort clearly exhausted him. He drank the water gratefully, his eyes never leaving her face. "You," he said after draining the cup, "you've been taking care of me." "Yes, the doctor was away and your men brought you to me." "For 3 weeks you've been nursing me," Winona nodded, suddenly feeling self-conscious under his intense gaze. Even weakened by fever and injury, Vincent Calloway was a striking man. His blue eyes held intelligence and strength, and there was something in the way he looked at her that made her pulse quicken. "I should thank you," he said quietly. "Those words seem inadequate for saving my life, but thank you. You're welcome. Now rest. You've been through a terrible ordeal and your body needs time to recover properly. What's your name? I should at least know the name of my angel of mercy." Heat rushed to Winona's cheeks. "Winona Garrett, and I'm no angel, just someone with some medical knowledge and a stubborn streak." A hint of a smile touched Vincent's lips. "I'd say that stubborn streak saved my life, Miss Garrett. It's just Winona, please, and you should sleep now. We can talk more when you're stronger." He wanted to protest. She could see it in his eyes, but exhaustion won. His eyes drifted closed, and within moments, he was sleeping naturally for the first time since the injury. Winona sat back in her chair, her whole body trembling with relief. He'd woken up. He was coherent. The worst was truly over. Dutch nearly wept when she told him the news later that morning. "Thank God," he said, wiping his eyes unashamedly. "Thank God and thank you, miss. The boys will be so relieved. Can we see him? Tomorrow, perhaps. Let him rest today. His body's been through a tremendous ordeal." Word spread quickly through the ranch and then through Castle Dome. The successful rancher who'd been at death's door was awake and recovering, thanks to the dedication of Winona Garrett. People began stopping by with gifts of gratitude: fresh bread, vegetables from gardens, even a beautiful quilt one of the ranch wives had made. Vincent woke again that evening, more alert this time. Winona helped him eat broth and soft bread, pleased to see his appetite returning. He watched her with those penetrating blue eyes as she worked, and she wondered what he was thinking. "You said you've been doing this for 3 weeks," he said after finishing the broth. "That's a long time to put your life on hold for a stranger. You needed help. I could provide it." It wasn't a difficult decision. Most people wouldn't have done it. Most would have done the minimum and let fate decide the rest. Winona met his gaze steadily. "I'm not most people, and I don't believe in giving half measures when someone's life hangs in the balance." Something shifted in Vincent's expression, a warmth that hadn't been there before. "No, you certainly aren't most people, Winona Garrett." Over the next few days, Vincent grew stronger. He could sit up on his own, carry on longer conversations, and eat more substantial food. Winona moved him to a chair by the window so he could see outside, knowing that mental stimulation was important for recovery. They talked constantly now. Vincent told her about building his ranch from nothing, about the challenges of running a large operation in the harsh Arizona territory. He spoke of his vision for the future, of breeding better cattle, of treating the land with respect so it would sustain them for generations. His passion was evident in every word, and Winona found herself captivated by his dreams. She shared her own stories too, no longer speaking to an unconscious man but to someone who genuinely wanted to know her. Vincent asked thoughtful questions about her healing work, about her life before Castle Dome, about her hopes and plans. No one had ever shown such interest in her thoughts before. "You should charge for your services," Vincent said one afternoon as they sat together by the window. "The skill you have, the dedication you show, it's worth good money." Winona shook her head. "Most of the people I help can't afford to pay. I get by with what they can offer and the work I do taking in sewing and laundry. It's enough. But you could do so much more if you had proper resources, a real clinic, quality supplies, maybe even an assistant." "That's a lovely dream, but dreams don't pay bills." Vincent studied her thoughtfully. "Dreams backed by determination and hard work can accomplish anything. I'm living proof of that." By the end of the 4th week, Vincent could walk short distances with support. Dutch and the ranch hands visited regularly now, their faces lighting up at seeing their boss recovering. But Winona noticed Vincent always seemed most relaxed when it was just the two of them, sitting together and talking about everything and nothing. She'd grown accustomed to his presence in her home, to the sound of his voice, to the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. It was dangerous, she knew. He was Vincent Calloway, successful rancher and prominent citizen. She was just Winona Garrett, who lived in a cottage on the edge of town and tended to people too poor for a proper doctor. Their worlds were completely different, but in the quiet moments they shared, those differences seemed to disappear. They were just two people who'd been through something profound together, who'd formed a connection in the crucible of life and death. One evening during the 5th week, as Winona prepared supper in the kitchen, Vincent appeared in the doorway. He was walking without support now, though he still moved carefully. "You should be resting," she scolded gently. "I've been resting for 5 weeks. I needed to stretch my legs." He leaned against the door frame, watching her work. "Winona, I need to talk to you about something." Her heart skipped at his serious tone. "Of course. What is it?" "I'll be well enough to return to the ranch in a few days. The men need me there, and I've imposed on your hospitality long enough." She'd known this moment was coming, but it still hit her like a physical blow. Of course he had to leave. His life was at the ranch, running his business, living his purpose. Their time together had been circumstantial, nothing more. "That's wonderful," she managed, keeping her voice steady. "You've made a remarkable recovery. Thanks to you." He moved closer, and suddenly the kitchen felt very small. "Winona, I've been thinking a lot these past weeks, about my life, about what matters, about the future." She kept her hands busy with the vegetables she was chopping, not trusting herself to look at him. "That's natural after such a close call with death. It's more than that. Being here talking with you, getting to know you, it's made me realize something important." He reached out and gently stilled her hands, making her meet his eyes. "I don't want to leave. Or rather, I don't want to leave you." Winona's breath caught. "Vincent, I don't understand what you're saying." "I think you do." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "These weeks together, they've been the happiest of my life, even through the pain and recovery. You're the most remarkable woman I've ever met. Strong, compassionate, intelligent, beautiful. I find myself thinking about you constantly, about how empty my life was before, how empty it will be if I go back to the ranch alone." "We barely know each other," she whispered, even as her heart raced with hope. "I know you stayed by my side for 3 weeks when anyone else would have given up. I know you have healing hands and a generous spirit. I know you talk to unconscious men and tell them stories to keep them company in the darkness. I know you take payment in vegetables and homemade quilts because you care more about helping people than getting rich. I know that when you smile, really smile, it lights up your whole face." "What more do I need to know?" Tears pricked her eyes. "Vincent, I'm not the kind of woman a man like you ends up with. You're successful, prominent. I'm nobody, just a woman who happens to know some healing." "You're not nobody." His voice was fierce now. "You're everything. And I don't care about social standing or what people think. I care about you, Winona. I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, momentous and terrifying. Winona wanted to believe him, wanted to throw caution aside and admit she felt the same way. Because she did. Somewhere between the desperate nights fighting his fever and the quiet afternoons talking by the window, she'd fallen for this strong, kind, passionate man. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I started falling for you even before you woke up, learning about you through your men's stories, seeing the kind of person you are even in unconsciousness. And these past 2 weeks, getting to really know you, it's only made those feelings stronger." Vincent's face broke into the most beautiful smile she'd ever seen. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite his obvious emotion. "Then stay with me. Come to the ranch, not as an employee or a guest, but as my wife. Marry me, Winona. Let me spend the rest of my life proving how much I love you." "This is so fast," she said, even as she leaned into his touch. "People will talk. Let them talk. I've never cared much for gossip, and I'm not about to start now. I know what I want, and I've learned not to waste time when something truly matters. You matter, Winona. You're what's been missing from my life." She thought about her little cottage, her quiet existence helping whoever needed her. It was a good life, but a lonely one. She'd never allowed herself to dream of something more, of partnership and love and building a future with someone. Now Vincent was offering her exactly that, and every part of her wanted to say yes. What about my healing work? I can't just abandon the people who depend on me. Don't abandon them. Expand. The ranch has plenty of space. We could build you a proper clinic, stock it with the best supplies. You could help even more people, do even more good, and I'd support you completely. Your calling is important, Winona. I'd never ask you to give it up. The last of her reservations crumbled. This man, this wonderful man, understood her completely. He wasn't asking her to change or give up who she was. He was offering to help her be more fully herself. Yes, she said, joy flooding through her. Yes, I'll marry you. Vincent pulled her into his arms, holding her close. She could feel his heart pounding against hers, could feel his breath in her hair. Then he tilted her face up and kissed her, gentle and sweet and full of promise. Winona melted into the kiss, into him, feeling like she'd finally found home. They sat together that evening, making plans for their future. Vincent wanted to marry soon, not willing to wait any longer than necessary. Winona suggested a small ceremony at the ranch with just the hands and a few friends from town. They talked about the clinic, about how to design it for maximum efficiency. They talked about the ranch, about Winona's role there, about building a life together. I want you to know, Vincent said as the evening grew late, that I see this as a true partnership. Your opinions, your desires, they matter as much as mine. We'll make decisions together, build this life together as equals. It was exactly what Winona needed to hear. She'd seen too many marriages where the woman became invisible, her personhood swallowed by her husband's needs and wants. That Vincent explicitly promised something different meant everything. News of their engagement spread quickly through Castle Dome and created quite a stir. Some people were thrilled, already knowing Winona's good character and believing Vincent deserved happiness. Others were scandalized by the speed of the courtship and the class difference. Winona heard whispers when she went into town, saw the judgmental looks. Let them whisper, Vincent said when she mentioned it. In 6 months, they'll have moved on to gossiping about someone else. What matters is us, what we're building together. Dutch and the other ranch hands were overjoyed. They'd grown to respect and admire Winona during Vincent's recovery, and they welcomed her warmly into the ranch family. The evening they announced the engagement at the ranch, the men threw an impromptu celebration with music and dancing and more joy than Winona had experienced in years. You're good for him, Dutch told her privately. He's always been a good boss, but there was a loneliness in him. That's gone now. He's happy in a way I've never seen before. The wedding took place 3 weeks later on a beautiful September evening. The ranch house was decorated with wildflowers gathered by the wives and children of the ranch hands. A circuit preacher who happened to be passing through performed the ceremony. Winona wore a simple but lovely dress that one of the town's seamstresses had made as a wedding gift, her hair crowned with flowers. Vincent stood at the makeshift altar in his best suit, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked toward him. Dutch stood as his best man, and Maria, the cook's wife, stood with Winona. The ceremony was simple but deeply moving, each word of the vows resonating with meaning. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed her with such tender passion that several of the watching women sighed. Winona felt tears of happiness streaming down her face as she clung to this man who'd become everything to her in such a short time. The celebration afterward was raucous and joyful. The ranch hands had roasted a whole steer and prepared a feast. There was music and dancing and laughter that echoed across the desert landscape. Winona danced with Vincent, with Dutch, with all the men who'd become her new family. She felt more accepted, more cherished than she'd ever felt in her life. As the evening grew late, Vincent swept her into his arms and carried her toward the ranch house amid cheers and good-natured ribbing from the hands. He'd moved into the main house when he returned to the ranch, and now Winona would share it with him as his wife. The house was larger than she'd expected, built solidly from adobe with thick walls that kept out the desert heat. Vincent had clearly put thought and care into its construction. He carried her over the threshold and set her down gently in the main room. "Welcome home," he said softly. Winona looked around at what was now her home, then back at the man who was now her husband. "I never imagined my life could be like this," she admitted. "A month ago I was alone, helping whoever needed me but always going back to an empty cottage. Now I have you, a home, a future full of possibilities. A month ago I was focused solely on the ranch, on building something successful," Vincent replied, pulling her close. "I didn't realize how empty that success was without someone to share it with. Without you. You've given me more than I even knew I was missing." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a celebration of the love they'd found in the most unlikely circumstances. Vincent treated her with reverence and care, making her feel cherished and desired. Winona gave herself fully to him, to their union, to the promise of their future together. The next morning they woke tangled together, and Vincent suggested showing her around the ranch properly. Over the next few days, he introduced her to every aspect of the operation. The cattle herds, the water sources, the lined shacks where hands stayed during roundups. He consulted her opinion on various decisions, making it clear he meant what he'd said about partnership. Winona fell in love with the ranch almost as much as she'd fallen in love with Vincent. There was something majestic about the harsh beauty of the desert landscape, about the daily rhythms of ranch life. She enjoyed getting to know the men who worked there, learning their stories and their families. True to his word, Vincent began construction on a clinic building within the first month of their marriage. He consulted Winona on every detail, making sure it would suit her needs perfectly. Word spread that there would be proper medical facilities at the Calloway Ranch, available to anyone who needed them regardless of ability to pay. "Are you sure about this?" Winona asked as they reviewed the construction plans one evening. "It's a significant expense with no financial return." "Some things matter more than profit," Vincent replied. "This is important to you, so it's important to me. Besides, healthy workers are productive workers. It's good for everyone." The clinic was completed by late October, a beautiful adobe building with large windows for light, examination areas, and storage for supplies. Vincent had ordered medical equipment from back east, spending what must have been a small fortune to stock it properly. When everything was ready, Winona stood in the middle of her new clinic and cried. "It's perfect," she told Vincent through her tears. "More than I ever dreamed of having. Thank you." He held her close, kissing her forehead. "You deserve this and so much more. I want to give you the world, Winona." The clinic quickly became vital to the community. Ranch hands came with injuries and illnesses. Their families came for various ailments. People from town started making the trek when they needed care. Winona worked tirelessly, and Vincent supported her completely, even hiring a young woman named Sarah to assist her. As autumn turned to winter, Winona settled fully into her new life. She loved being Vincent's wife, loved the partnership they'd built. They made decisions together, supported each other's goals, and spent their evenings talking about everything under the sun. The physical passion between them remained strong, but it was the emotional intimacy that Winona treasured most. December brought cooler weather and lighter workloads on the ranch. Vincent used the time to teach Winona to ride better, taking her on long explorations of their land. She showed him plants that had medicinal properties, sharing her knowledge of desert herbs and their uses. They learned from each other, grew together, deepened their bond. Christmas was a revelation for Winona. Vincent insisted on a big celebration at the ranch, inviting all the hands and their families. There were gifts for everyone, a huge feast, and more joy than the ranch house had probably ever seen. Vincent gave Winona a beautiful silver locket with their wedding date engraved inside. "So you'll always remember the day you made me the happiest man alive," he said as he fastened it around her neck. Winona's gift to him was simpler, a leather-bound journal she'd made herself for him to record ranch operations and his own thoughts. But Vincent treasured it, touched by the personal care she'd put into creating something unique for him. As they lay together on Christmas night, Winona reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. 5 months ago, she'd been a lonely woman living on the edge of town. Now she was married to a wonderful man, doing healing work she loved, part of a community that valued her. Life could change so quickly, so completely, if you were brave enough to let it. The new year of 1877 brought exciting developments. The clinic's reputation spread, and people started coming from farther away for treatment. Vincent hired additional help so Winona wouldn't be overwhelmed. The ranch continued to prosper under Vincent's careful management and innovative ideas. In February, Winona realized she was pregnant. The signs were unmistakable to someone with her medical knowledge. Joy and nervousness warred within her as she contemplated telling Vincent. They talked about wanting children eventually, but she wasn't sure if he was ready so soon. She needn't have worried. When she told him that evening, Vincent's face lit up with pure elation. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around before remembering to be gentle and setting her down carefully. "We're going to have a baby?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Truly, truly." "Probably late August or early September." Vincent placed his hand on her still flat stomach with wonder. "Our child. Part of you and part of me. Winona, I couldn't be happier." They spent hours that night talking about the future, about raising children on the ranch, about the family they were building. Vincent was adamant that Winona should reduce her clinic hours and take care of herself. She agreed to scale back, but refused to stop working entirely. "I'll be sensible," she promised, "but I'm pregnant, not fragile. Women have been working through pregnancy since the beginning of time. You're not just any woman. You're my wife carrying my child. I want to take care of you." His protectiveness was endearing, even when it occasionally verged on excessive. Winona learned to appreciate that it came from love, not a desire to control. Vincent supported her continued clinic work even as he insisted she not overdo things. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Winona continued seeing patients through her first trimester, though she let Sarah handle more of the routine cases. Vincent doted on her constantly, making sure she ate well, rested enough, and didn't lift anything heavy. The ranch hands were equally protective, treating her like precious cargo. "You'd think I was made of glass," she complained good-naturedly to Vincent one evening in April. "Can you blame us? You're carrying the next generation of Calloways. That's pretty important around here." Winona was showing noticeably now, her body changing to accommodate the growing life within. Vincent was fascinated by every change, constantly asking how she felt, if the baby was moving, what she needed. His involvement touched her deeply. She'd heard stories of men who considered pregnancy entirely women's business, but Vincent wanted to be part of every moment. In May, Winona felt the baby move for the first time. She immediately grabbed Vincent's hand and placed it on her stomach. His face when he felt that first tiny flutter was worth capturing in a painting. Pure wonder and love radiated from him. "That's our baby," he whispered. "Actually moving and growing, it makes it all feel so real." It's very real, Winona laughed. Especially when this baby decides to dance on my bladder at 3 in the morning. Summer brought intense heat to the Arizona territory. Winona reduced her clinic hours even further, spending her afternoons resting in the cool adobe house. Vincent arranged for a woman from town to help with housework, refusing to let Winona exhaust herself with chores. She appreciated the help, though she sometimes missed the independence of doing things herself. They prepared a nursery in one of the spare bedrooms, painting it cheerful colors and setting up a cradle that Dutch had carved himself. The ranch wives threw a celebration for the coming baby, showering Winona with handmade clothes, blankets, and advice. She felt embraced by this community in ways she'd never experienced before. "You've given me more than a husband and child," she told Vincent one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. "You've given me a family, a real home. I'll never be able to thank you enough." "You saved my life," Vincent reminded her. "Everything I have, everything we've built, it only exists because you refused to give up on me. I'm the one who should be grateful." "Then we're both grateful. That's a good foundation for a marriage." The baby came on a sweltering evening in late August, almost exactly a year after Vincent had been carried unconscious through Winona's door. Labor was long and difficult, but Winona had delivered enough babies to know what to expect. Vincent stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, murmuring encouragement. It wasn't entirely proper for husbands to be present at births, but Winona wanted him there, and Vincent refused to be anywhere else. When their son finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Vincent actually wept. He cut the cord with shaking hands, then watched in awe as Winona cleaned and examined the baby. "He's perfect," she assured him. 10 fingers, 10 toes, good strong lungs. Our son is healthy and beautiful." Vincent held the baby with infinite care, cradling him against his chest. "Our son," he repeated wonderingly. "We have a son." They named him William Thomas Calloway, after Vincent's father and Winona's grandfather. Billy, as they immediately started calling him, was a content baby with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined chin. Vincent proved to be a devoted father, involved in every aspect of Billy's care. He changed diapers, walked the floors during fussy nights, and spent hours just watching his son sleep. "I never knew I could love anything this much," Vincent admitted one night as they stood over Billy's cradle. "First you, then him. My heart feels like it might burst." The ranch hands were equally smitten with the baby. Dutch appointed himself honorary grandfather, while the younger hands competed to hold Billy and make him smile. The ranch that had once been solely focused on cattle and profits now had children's laughter echoing through it regularly, as families felt more welcome than ever. Winona returned to the clinic part-time after Billy was born, bringing him along when he was small. As he grew, Vincent often took over childcare duties while she worked. Their partnership extended to parenting, each supporting the other, sharing responsibilities equally. It was an unconventional arrangement for the time, but it worked perfectly for them. Billy's first year flew by in a blur of milestones and joy. His first smile, his first tooth, his first words, all celebrated like the miracles they were. The ranch continued to prosper, and the clinic helped more people than ever. Winona's reputation as a healer grew, and people came from across the territory seeking her care. On Billy's first birthday, they threw a huge celebration at the ranch. Half of Castle Dome attended, along with all the ranch families. There was food, music, dancing, and a general atmosphere of joy. As Winona watched Vincent play with their son, saw the happiness radiating from both of them, she marveled at how dramatically life could change. 2 years ago, She'd been alone in a cottage, helping whoever needed her but living a solitary existence. Now she had a husband she adored, a son who brought constant joy, meaningful work, and a community that valued her. She'd found everything she'd ever wanted, and things she'd never known to dream of. That evening, after Billy was asleep and the guests had gone home, Vincent pulled Winona into his arms on the porch. They stood together watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, comfortable in the silence they'd shared since those first days when he was recovering. "You ever regret it?" Vincent asked softly. "Marrying me so quickly, changing your whole life?" Winona turned to face him, cupping his beloved face in her hands. "Not for a single moment. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Vincent Calloway. You and Billy, this life we've built, it's beyond anything I ever imagined for myself." "I feel the same way. Before you, I had success but not happiness. I had a ranch but not a home. You transformed everything, made it all meaningful. I love you so much, Winona. I love you too, always." They kissed as the stars multiplied overhead. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way and built something beautiful together. The years that followed brought continued happiness and growth. Billy became a rambunctious toddler who loved the ranch and all its animals. Vincent expanded operations, acquiring more land and improving their breeding program. Winona's clinic became an established institution, respected throughout the territory. When Billy was 2.5, Winona became pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect and wasn't as nervous. Vincent was just as excited and protective as the first time, maybe even more so. Their daughter Sarah, named after Winona's late mother, arrived in the spring of 1880. She had Winona's chestnut hair and Vincent's bright blue eyes, and she wrapped everyone around her tiny finger from day one. Billy was initially uncertain about sharing attention, but quickly became a protective older brother. The ranch house echoed with children's laughter now, a sound Vincent never tired of hearing. He'd built an addition to accommodate their growing family, adding more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. The clinic had also expanded, with Winona training several women as assistants to handle the increasing patient load. "We're building something that will outlast us," Vincent said one evening as they watched their children play in the yard. "A legacy that's about more than just land and cattle. It's about family, community, helping people. That matters." "It matters a great deal," Winona agreed. "And it all started because your men brought you to my door that August day. Best day of my life, even if I don't remember most of it." Vincent pulled her close. "Those weeks you spent saving me, they changed everything. You changed everything." Life wasn't always easy. The ranch faced challenges from drought, market fluctuations, and the general difficulties of operating in a harsh environment. The clinic dealt with tragedies when patients couldn't be saved. They weathered arguments and disagreements like any couple. But through it all, their love remained constant, a foundation that supported everything else. Billy grew into a thoughtful, hard-working boy who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Sarah was spirited and curious, equally comfortable helping her mother in the clinic or riding horses with her father. A third child, James, arrived when Sarah was 3, completing their family. The 1880s brought significant changes to the Arizona territory. More people arrived, towns grew, civilization encroached on the wild spaces. The ranch adapted, implementing new techniques and technologies while maintaining the values that had always defined it. Fair treatment of workers, respect for the land, community involvement. These remained constants even as everything else evolved. Vincent became increasingly prominent in territorial affairs, using his influence to advocate for schools, infrastructure improvements, and fair treatment of smaller ranchers. Winona's clinic became a model for others, and she mentored several women who wanted to pursue healing work. They used their success to lift up others, never forgetting their humble beginnings. As the children grew older, Vincent and Winona made sure they understood the story of how their parents met. They told them about the fever, about the weeks of desperate nursing, about the love that grew from crisis and caring. They wanted their children to understand that real love was built on sacrifice, dedication, and partnership. "You stayed by Papa's side when anyone else would have given up," Billy said once when he was about 10. "That's real love. Real love is choosing someone every day," Winona corrected gently. "It's supporting their dreams, sharing their burdens, building a life together." The dramatic beginning was just that, a beginning. Everything that came after, that's the real story. The ranch continued to prosper through the years. Vincent's innovations in cattle breeding gained recognition throughout the territory. The clinic's reputation spread, with patients traveling from increasingly distant locations. Their children grew healthy and strong, each developing their own interests and personalities. Billy showed early aptitude for ranching, spending every spare moment working with his father and the hands. Sarah loved helping in the clinic, showing the same healing instincts her mother possessed. James was too young yet to reveal his passions, but he was bright and affectionate, adored by everyone on the ranch. Vincent and Winona made sure to carve out time for just the two of them, despite the demands of work and parenting. They took evening rides together, sat talking under the stars like they had in those early days, maintained the romance and passion that had brought them together. Their relationship remained a priority, the center around which everything else revolved. "Some couples lose themselves in the daily grind," Vincent observed one evening as they sat together on the porch. "We've managed to avoid that, because we both work at it," Winona replied. "A good marriage doesn't just happen. You have to tend it like a garden, giving it attention and care." "You're very wise, Mrs. Calloway." "I had a good teacher in partnership, Mr. Calloway." The turn into the 1890s brought continued growth and change. Arizona moved closer to statehood, and Vincent was occasionally mentioned as a potential political candidate. He always declined, preferring to focus on the ranch and his family. His influence was significant even without holding office, and he used it to advocate for causes he believed in. Winona's clinic treated its 10,000th patient in 1891, a milestone celebrated throughout Castle Dome. She'd saved countless lives, eased suffering, brought children safely into the world. Her legacy was written in the healthy people walking the streets of the territory. Their children continued to thrive. Billy, now a teenager, was becoming a skilled rancher in his own right. Sarah, approaching adolescence, spent increasing amounts of time studying medicine and helping her mother. James showed signs of having his father's head for business and his mother's compassion, a promising combination. Vincent and Winona were in their 40s now, their dark hair showing threads of silver, but the love in their eyes when they looked at each other remained as strong as ever. They'd built something extraordinary together, a life filled with purpose, family, and deep satisfaction. One evening in the spring of 1893, Vincent and Winona sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and purple. Their children were inside finishing homework, the ranch was quiet after the day's work, and the world felt perfectly peaceful. "Do you remember when I asked you to stay forever?" Vincent asked, taking her hand. "That day after I finally woke up when I realized what you'd done for me." "Of course I remember. I remember everything about those weeks. I meant it literally, you know. Forever. I want to grow old with you, watch our grandchildren grow up, spend every remaining day of my life by your side." Winona squeezed his hand, emotion tightening her throat. That's exactly what we're doing. We're living forever one day at a time, building something that will outlast both of us. The ranch will go to Billy, I expect. He loves it the way I do. And Sarah will likely take over the clinic. She has the gift. James will probably end up running some business empire. They both laughed, able to envision exactly that outcome. Whatever they do, wherever they go, they'll carry what we've taught them, Winona said. About love, about integrity, about using whatever success you achieve to help others. That's the real legacy. Vincent pulled her close, and they sat together as darkness fell, the stars emerging one by one overhead. The same stars that had witnessed their wedding were watching still as their love continued to deepen with each passing year. The ranch hands started arriving for the evening, lights coming on in the bunkhouses and small homes scattered across the property. Smoke rose from chimneys as families prepared dinner. Children's laughter echoed across the cooling air. This community they'd built together was thriving, and it brought profound satisfaction to both of them. "Thank you," Vincent said softly, "for staying all those weeks when I was fevered and helpless, for saying yes when I asked you to marry me, for being my partner in building all of this, for giving me children and love and purpose, for everything, Winona. Thank you." Tears slipped down Winona's cheeks. "Thank you for seeing me, for valuing what I had to offer, for supporting my work and dreams, for being the kind of husband and father who makes everything better, for loving me so completely. I've lived a life beyond my wildest dreams because of you." They kissed as they had countless times over the years, but it never grew old or routine. Each kiss was a renewal of their commitment, a celebration of the love that had started in such unusual circumstances and grown into something extraordinary. As the years continued passing, Billy married a sensible young woman from a neighboring ranch and began running more of the daily operations. He and his wife gave Vincent and Winona their first grandchild, a girl they named Winona after her grandmother, in 1895. The joy of holding that tiny baby, seeing the continuation of their family line, was overwhelming for both of them. Sarah pursued formal medical training, one of the first women in the territory to do so. She eventually took over full management of the clinic, expanding services and training more assistants. Her mother's legacy was secure in capable hands. James, as predicted, showed remarkable business acumen. He helped modernize ranch operations and eventually established additional enterprises that diversified the family's holdings. But he never forgot the values his parents had instilled, always using his success to benefit the broader community. Vincent and Winona stepped back gradually from daily management, spending more time with grandchildren and each other. They traveled some, visiting places they'd always wanted to see, but they always returned to the ranch, to the home they'd built together in the Arizona territory. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1902, they renewed their vows in a simple ceremony surrounded by children, grandchildren, ranch families, and friends from throughout the territory. The circuit preacher who'd married them originally had long since passed, but a young minister performed the ceremony with appropriate solemnity and joy. Winona wore a beautiful dress Sarah had commissioned from a seamstress in Phoenix, and Vincent wore his finest suit. But it was their faces that everyone remembered, glowing with love that had only grown stronger over a quarter-century together. "I, Vincent, take you, Winona, again and forever," Vincent said, his voice strong and sure. "My wife, my partner, the love of my life. You saved me in every way a person can be saved, and I promise to spend whatever years remain showing you how grateful I am." "I, Winona, take you, Vincent, again and forever," Winona replied, her voice equally steady despite tears streaming down her face. "My husband, my love, my home. You gave me a life of purpose and joy beyond anything I'd imagined. I promise to spend whatever years remain loving you with everything I am." When they kissed, applause erupted from everyone gathered. Billy and Sarah and James stood together, proud of their parents and the example they'd set. Grandchildren watched wide-eyed, absorbing this demonstration of enduring love. The celebration afterward rivaled their original wedding. A whole steer was roasted, tables groaned under the weight of contributed dishes, and there was music and dancing until late into the night. Vincent and Winona danced together repeatedly, moving in perfect synchronization after so many years as partners. As the party wound down and guests departed, they found themselves once again on their porch, in the spot where they'd shared so many conversations over the years. The ranch spread out before them, peaceful and prosperous, everything they'd worked so hard to build. 25 years, Vincent mused, seems like both forever and no time at all. I know exactly what you mean. I remember those first weeks so vividly, like they happened yesterday. But we've lived entire lifetimes since then. And I'd do it all again. Every moment, every challenge, every joy, as long as I got to do it with you. Winona rested her head on his shoulder, completely content. They'd faced obstacles and sorrows over the years, as every life contained. But they'd faced them together, drawing strength from their partnership and love. The children eventually came out to say goodnight, along with several grandchildren. There were hugs and kisses, expressions of love, then everyone dispersed to their own homes and rooms. Vincent and Winona were left alone in the darkness, stars overhead and decades of memories surrounding them. "We should probably head to bed," Winona said eventually, though neither moved. "In a minute. I just want to sit here with you a little longer, enjoying this perfect moment." So they sat together as they had so many times before, the rancher and the healer who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. He'd been carried to her door more dead than alive, and she'd refused to let him go. From that dedication, from those desperate weeks fighting fever and death, had grown a love story for the ages. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, passed down through generations of Callaways. The clinic would serve the community for decades to come. Winona's legacy of healing preserved and expanded by Sarah and those she trained. But more than buildings or businesses, Vincent and Winona left a legacy of love and partnership, of two people who'd built something beautiful together and never stopped choosing each other. As they finally made their way to bed that night, walking hand in hand through the house they'd shared for 25 years, Vincent pulled Winona close one more time. "I love you," he said simply. "Today, tomorrow, forever. That will never change." "I love you too," Winona replied. "With everything I am, everything I have. Forever." They'd started with forever that day when Vincent woke from his fever and asked her to stay. Now, decades later, forever was still stretching ahead of them, full of promise and love and the deep satisfaction of a life well lived together. The Arizona night settled over the ranch, quiet and vast. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Cattle lowed softly in their enclosures. A gentle breeze whispered through the desert plants. Inside the ranch house, Vincent and Winona Calloway settled into bed, wrapped in each other's arms, ready to face whatever tomorrow brought as they'd faced everything else together. Their story had started with illness and fever, with desperate nursing and the thin line between life and death. It had grown into something neither could have predicted, a partnership that transformed both their lives and created ripples that spread throughout the community. The rancher and the healer, brought together by chance and held together by choice, had built something extraordinary. And they lived happily, contentedly, surrounded by the family and legacy they'd created together for many more years. When Vincent passed peacefully in his sleep at age 73, Winona held his hand just as she had during those fevered weeks so long ago. And when she joined him 2 years later, their children and grandchildren gathered to celebrate lives well lived and a love that had transformed everyone it touched. The ranch continued under Billy's capable management, eventually passed to his own children. The clinic served the community for generations, always bearing Winona's name and commitment to helping anyone in need regardless of ability to pay. And the story of how Vincent and Winona met, how love grew from crisis and caring, became family legend passed down through the years. Sometimes on quiet evenings at the ranch, when the desert wind whispers through the buildings and the stars shine bright overhead, those who live there swear they can feel the presence of Vincent and Winona still watching over the land they loved, the family they created, the legacy they built together. Two souls bound by love, partners in life and beyond, their story echoing through time as a testament to the transforming power of dedication, sacrifice, and choosing love every single day.